everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Kelly Green Hour. This is Victory Green Hour number 3 as the Philadelphia Eagles defeat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 25-11 on Monday Night Football in what was their most complete effort of the season thus far in this early season, as the Eagles are the only team in the NFC East to pick up a victory this past weekend. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, I said it, and you can agree, disagree, kind of expand on if you want. Easily the best effort by the Eagles this year.
Shout out to Jerry. Go Birds, definitely. Yeah, definitely the most complete effort. The first half was spotty for the offense. It kind of got better, and then at halftime, suddenly, everything made a bit more sense because suddenly Jalen Hurts had flu-like symptoms, and that didn't come out until halftime. Ironically, after the Eagles didn't have a great offensive half.
Jason Kelsey did too.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a little flu going around, and it just so happened to hit there on their travel down. So, ironically, the reports only came out at halftime after a not so great offensive effort. But that's just my thoughts. But easily the best defensive game by far. That was an absolute. I mean, shout out to the Bucs offensive coordinator for really trying to get a run game going, because we saw as soon as the Eagles. The Eagles often on offense got away from the run when the run was the most successful part of the game throughout the first half. That was where I was banging my head against wall. And then, so first quarter, DeAndre Swift plays 17 snaps, Gainwell plays 1, and then the script flips in the second quarter, and all we see is Kenneth Gainwell and a fairly inconsistent run game that forced them to throw the ball a lot more. So, I mean, I know we're going to dive into it all, and I know that we're all on board with, it's time for Kenneth Gainwell to truly take the back seat and not split anywhere near 50-50 with DeAndre Swift. But I mean, that's going to be on.
So kind of expand on that a little bit. I think we'll see Gainwell in the fourth quarter when the Eagles have 2-score leads like yesterday. They want to preserve DeAndre Swift. We're not going to see 28 carries a game from him. And when you're up 2 scores, I do want to talk about that masterful 9-minute and 22-second drive to end the game, by the way, because that I don't think I've ever seen that ever before in the NFL. And I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Yai Chol. The most dominant performance by both the O-line and D-line so far in this young season. 100%. It's true. We're definitely going to talk about
that offensive line imposed their will.
Carter is okay. He's 3 games into his career. He might be the best player on the Eagles defense. And that's not hyperbole. He is freaking amazing. We're definitely going to talk about him. But before we continue, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJ Harrell54. And follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Edge of Philly Sports. And if you're tuning in live, we've already got a couple comments flowing in. Let us know your thoughts on the Monday night game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Eagles won 25-11. This is going to be our focus today, and we'll be back later this week, most likely Friday, and we'll get you ready for the first NFC East matchup as the Philadelphia Eagles host the Washington Commanders on Sunday in one of their 3 1:00 games. It's going to be weird seeing a 1:00 game. So yes, we'll be talking about that later on this week, but we want to focus in on the Eagles and Buccaneers. Now I'm going to think how I said it the first time. Yai Chol. Pronunciation was on point. Thank you for the show, by the way. You're very welcome. Thank you for tuning in and being a part of it. Let us know your thoughts on the game and how the Eagles looked. You obviously mentioned their O-line and D-line. Connor, let's start there with the offensive and defensive line. I mean, they were dominant. You mentioned it early on in the game. It was a little sluggish on the offensive side of the ball. And I think we're seeing Brian Johnson start to get into a rhythm. His first 3 games have been against Bill Belichick, Brian Flores, and Todd Bowles in his first 3 games ever calling an offense in the NFL. The next one's going to be against Jack Del Rio, so it's not going to be easy. And then the next one's going to be against the I think it's the Rams, and the Rams that might be the easiest, even though they have Aaron Donald. So he hasn't had an easy welcome to the NFL moment, but he's found what works, and he's stuck with it. Against the Vikings, they could run the ball at will. They ran the ball at will. against the Buccaneers, who came in as the number 2 rushing defense in the NFL. It did not matter. Vita Vea did not make a dent in the game. Levante David and
Shaq Barrett
and White. And we talked about it on Friday in the preview show. Like, we expected the linebackers for the Bucs to be able to go sideline to sideline. It did not matter in the running game. DeAndre Swift, you could go, a garbage truck could run through the holes that the Eagles' offensive line was opening up. I could have ran. I'm an offensive lineman. I could have ran for 10 yards behind the Eagles' offensive line. It was awesome the way the offensive line opened things up. And Mr. Crockpot says, red zone offense was a concern, but I like how Brian Johnson has been handling the blitz the last 2 weeks. I agree. It's a process. The one thing about the Eagles, though, that unlike the other team in the division that thinks that they're Super Bowl contenders, they have trust in their quarterback. I don't think McCarthy has trust in Dak Prescott, but that's a different story for a different day. But yeah, I mean, you can expand on this, Connor, just the way that the Eagles offense was able to move the ball on the ground at will, and that opened up the passing game. And being able to run the way they are, it's going to allow Jalen, who is struggling, and let's be real, he's struggling in the early going. It's going to allow him to get into rhythm, and hopefully in the next week, 3 weeks, he'll be able to get on board. And when this offense is sitting on all cylinders through the air on the ground, good luck to opposing defenses.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You said everything greatly. Mr. Crockpot said it great as well. The red zone offense, I mean, the final score is 25-11. This easily could have been 32 or 39-11. But exactly. It didn't end up coming to fruition that we got those early touches. That first 4th down call where they brought Gainwell out, and Gainwell just got taken out at the with like no gain, maybe like inches gain, when all we needed was, I think we need 2 yards on the play. So, I mean, that was kind of disappointing. We could have come away with a field goal there instead. I didn't mind being aggressive, but it was kind of frustrating that the personnel on that play was just not right. It just didn't fit the way that drive had been performing up to that point. I mean, we did talk about, 8 total pressures allowed and 1 sack. And the 1 sack, I don't think was even on the offensive line. I think the sack was attributed to Jalen Hurts himself. So, 8 total pressures allowed against this defensive line is really impressive. They imposed their will. Those first couple of drives, and then that 9-minute drive, that offensive line just looked so good. Landon Dickerson did go down. I kind of think it was more to do with like cramping and the heat, because it was 101 degrees at kickoff. Yeah, while the rain cooled it down. Yeah, well, the rain cooled it down. It was still like super warm. So I feel like there's a bit of that. A bit of that went into play throughout the game as well, and that's probably why DeAndre Swift had to come out as well too, because you can't be running a guy in 100-degree weather constantly like that. But yeah, the offensive line, I don't think there's any more we can say, but this was definitely their best performance, and I hope there's more performances like it to come, because we are at our best when the offensive line is at its best. And it showed last night that even though Jalen Hurts couldn't be at the top of his game, that offensive line made every aspect of that offense just look so much better.
Mr. Crockpot, people are upset that Gainwell took a bulk of the carries in the second half, but I'm good with it. It's September. The plan has been keeping Swift fresh and healthy, and we mentioned that on the outset of the episode. As much I want to see Rashad Penny. Like, I have a feeling that if they knew they were going to trade for DeAndre Swift, they would have never signed Rashad Penny. He is not being used at all. He's not seeing the field right now, and there was only 3 running backs dressed with Gainwell, Swift, and Penny, because Scott was out with a concussion. And Dave says, nice to see you guys go Birds. Yep, we're 3-0, Dave. And does Swift lead the NFL in rushing yards this year? Depends on if he stays healthy. McCaffrey is pretty good. McCaffrey, who leads the league right now in rushing, and he's going to have.
I just don't see it split in the backfield the way I think as the season continues on that we're going to see the split. Somebody who's on the field a lot more is going to see, like you see, like even Zach Moss is seeing a lion's share of time. If they can sort things out with Jonathan Taylor, obviously Moss takes a back seat again. But Christian McCaffrey sees a lion's share of work and barely comes off the field. There's other guys who are going to be out there a lot more.
They do give the ball to Elijah Mitchell a little too, and so we'll see what happens. And I just think obviously health for all the players is going to be a key factor.
It's a hot take. It's definitely a hot take if you say he will, because there's a potential he will. I just don't foresee it, just the way we treat our our running back room.
It's
I just
crazy
don't
though.
see it.
The holes that DeAndre Swift had yesterday, he wasn't getting touched till it's like 10 yards down the field. And I don't remember, I don't have the stats off I don't know if you have the stats. Like his yards before contact had to have been ridiculous. He had to have averaged like 6 or 7 yards a carry before contact yesterday. That's how big those holes were. The entire line was played awesome. Even Juergens, who we thought maybe they'll put Vita Vea over him, and that could be a tough matchup. Juergens did well. Swift leads the league in yards before contact by a wide margin. It's crazy, and I think we talked about that, or no, it was actually talked about with Penny, because Penny is one when he was with Seattle, he would lead the league in yards before contact, and that was with Seattle's offensive line, and Seattle's offensive line isn't good, but the Eagles' offensive line is just opening up. We mentioned at the beginning, it's opening up wide open holes. I could run through them. Fletcher Cox could run through them. Vita Vea could run through them. That's how huge these holes are that the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is opening up for Swift. And like, why wouldn't, if you're Brian Johnson, why would you call a passing play? Establish the run, use play action. But I do want to talk about Jalen a little bit. Again, you mentioned how there was, he kind of had the stomach bug going in before the game, and that maybe could have potentially affected him. His touchdown pass to Olamide Zaccheaus, he had 5.6 seconds, and he got hit as he was throwing that ball. I thought it was going to be picked when he let it go, but he put just enough on it. And is it me, or but does Zaccheaus look like Nelson Aguilar running out there with number 13? He looked like Nelson Aguilar.
Little bit.
I thought he was going to drop it. I had flashbacks. I'm just saying, I had flashbacks. But no, but in all seriousness, I mean, Zaccheaus, we finally got you. I think it was you who mentioned it yesterday. I don't know if it was on Twitter in our group chat, that we, from the third receiver, we're finally getting production. He only had 2 catches, but it was on plays that Jalen extended a little bit. He had a little bit longer time in the pocket, and he was able to find Zaccheaus open because Zaccheaus was doing what he was doing. That was good to see, but we still need to see a little bit more from Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're talking about our third wide receiver, all we want is you to make the plays when you're called upon, because you're not going to be called upon a lot. Zaccheaus was called on, like, I think he had 3 targets. Maybe you just said the 2, but I think he had a 3rd target. And you just need to make the plays when we need you to make the plays. And he stepped up in a huge spot where Quez Watkins wasn't in the lineup because he was injured. And after him, there was going to be nobody. You're looking at Britton Covey and Devin Allen going out there. So the fact that he's able to make those plays gives you a little bit more confidence. By the way, yards before contact of DeAndre Swift's 308 rushing yards this season, 250 of them come before contact, which is a league lead-in by, and this surprised me, by 44 yards on James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. He has 206 yards before contact.
You watched that Cardinals Cowboys game. He was running. He had a couple runs where he wasn't getting to him and Rondell Moore.
But I agree with you. Like, I mean, I think we haven't seen the best from Jalen Hurts yet. We're going to start to see better from Jalen Hurts. Who knows how much the flu was affecting him or the symptoms were affecting him. I mean, he looked off on some plays. He was thrown behind. He was thrown right. He was thrown left of guys where all he had to do was lead the guy into the catch, but he was throwing at them, or just miscommunications with their wide receiver or Dallas Goedert. There was a couple plays where there was just miscues where he wanted the guy to stop, and the guy continued on in their route. So, I mean, I think it's going to get better. It's going to get a lot better. And as frustrating as it is at the end of the day, he will get better. This offense will get better. Like, I think we saw the best all-around performance without it being Jalen Hurts' best performance. So if we still haven't seen the best performance from probably our best player, I mean, there is more good things to come. And I think next week we may very well, I think we are going to see it against the Washington Commanders, because that Commanders team,
their defense is good though.
Their defense is good. Their offense is looking better under Bieniemy, but it's still not a complete. They're not a complete team that you're worried about. But yeah, we'll talk about that on Friday. We'll say, Mitch says, "What's up, guys? What's up, Mitch?" Daniel Barry says, "Hey everyone, what's up, Daniel? Thanks everyone for joining the show." And Mr. Crockbot mentioned 2021 Jalen Hurts abandons the pocket on the Zacchaeus touchdown pass. Very impressed with his patience in the pocket and throwing a dime with pressure in his face. His pocket presence is I think it's even better this year than it was last year. And he's not even looking all that great yet this year.
I really think the coaching staff told him, we don't want you running. We just gave you $250 million. We want you to stay, healthy. So don't.
He still ran 10 times for 28 yards. So he's still running like
sneaks though. He did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I guess when 3 or 4 of those were the tush push play that is destroying the league and ESPN's broadcasters. I feel like that's why they were splitting the screen so often, was because they just wanted to spite Eagles fans because of the tush push. But because that was frustrating. If I wanted to see that other game, it's on another channel. I'll flip over there.
We have a 65. You have a 65-inch TV, whatever inch TV. I want to watch this game. If I wanted to watch Rams Bengals, I would have switched over to ESPN. No.
And listen, I love the idea of 2 Monday night games. The past 2 Mondays have been really fun, but if it's going to be where 25% of the game is on the screen with the game you're trying to watch, that's kind of annoying, and I'm not down for 2 Monday night games. If you get rid of that split screen and only show it on highlights during commercials or during timeouts or whatever, you're showing highlights of the game, okay, that's fine. Otherwise, please don't.
I agree with you. I definitely 100% agree with you. Keep continuing with the offense. A.J. Brown had a big game, 9 catches, 131 yards. He dropped a couple, which was very uncharacteristic of him. He had a touchdown to the side of the end zone. One thing I did want to bring up, and Mr. Crockpot brought up 2021. Remember the concerns coming into last year that we had for Jalen Hurts? We didn't know if he could actually and he blew us away, obviously, number 2 in the MVP voting. They're the concerns I have right now for Jalen Hurts. And I'm not saying he's regression. I'm not saying he's not going to be able to pick it up. But my concerns after 3 weeks are, is he going to be able to get it go? Is he going to be able to throw the ball? Is he going to be consistent with throwing the football? Going to be he is a 68% complete. He does have a 68% completion percentage, so that's good. But I do still want to see him, figure it out, get a little bit better. So he had the 2 interceptions yesterday. The one miscommunication between him and Swift. The other one reminded me of the playoff interception that he threw against Tampa when he was trying to hit Smith and he threw it late and the safety came over. That was a great play by the safety. I think it's Delaney for Tampa. But I also think that Hurts threw it a little early. Or no, excuse me, threw it a little late. He could have probably. I don't remember the play specifically. If he had time and whatnot to be able to get the ball to Smith, but he still has that in him a little bit. But again, the Eagles are 3-0, and he hasn't played an A game yet. He has played at best a C. Imagine if he improves to a B, let alone an A. It could get dangerous for some of the teams that we're going to be playing against. And look, I would love to see it in 3 weeks' time. I think it's 3 weeks. Yeah, in 4 weeks' time when we get the Dolphins on Sunday Night Football. That could be a track race of a game with the offense that the Dolphins have and the potential offense that the Eagles could have. If Hurts gets his game going, I just need to see him continue to prove. What did I say last week? You do not win the Super Bowl in September, right? Get better week by week by week so that when you get to January and February, you're playing your best ball. And that's what I think Jalen is guaranteed, because his saying, the main thing is the main thing. And what's the main thing? Winning. And that's what the Eagles are doing right now.
Yeah, and I mean, it feels like it's been said by a lot of Eagles fans. It feels like the goalposts are being moved again for the Eagles this year. Last year was all about, well, you have the easy schedule in the NFL. Of course, you're going to finish this way. This year, we have actually a top 5 hardest schedule in the NFL. And again, the goalposts continue to move because of the competition. Tampa Bay was undefeated heading into this game. And now they're sitting there and saying, well, let's wait and see when they play Dallas. Let's wait and see when they play Miami. Let's wait and see when they play, when we play real teams. Of course, those are all important games, but winning games counts as well, because say we're 0-3 right now, things are looking really bleak. We're probably looking at not even winning. Well, I mean, tough to say in the NFCs, but you're looking at probably not winning the division in most divisions if you're starting out 0-3. So it's important to win these games, and we were talking about it on the episode on Friday, where I said we need to win these games now, because when we hit that gauntlet of teams where it's 5 straight weeks of teams that are the tops of the leagues right now in some way, shape, or form, we may come out of that 3-2 or 2-3, but coming out of this stretch of games 6-0 makes going 3-2 or 2-3 a lot easier to swallow later in the season. And we said it at the beginning of the year, we can be just as good as last year, but our record not reflect that.
Exactly.
Because we have a way tougher schedule, and you get the easy to start, you get difficult in the middle, and you get easy to end it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. But running through that gauntlet of games and finishing above 500 and coming out of these string of games well above 500 is going to be really important to ending up winning the NFC East. So it'll be interesting to see how it continues to roll. But every time you see it, the national media continues to move the goalposts for the Philadelphia Eagles and make comments about the competition we played. A win's a win. To me, a win is a win.
A ranking of teams that had the Eagles 6th and Dallas ahead of the Eagles after losing to Arizona. Like, give me a break. Like, you're right. They need to stop moving. A lot of teams, this is the first time the Eagles have started 3-0 back-to-back in 30 years, since 92 and 93. That's a long time. And, the Eagles lost the Super Bowl last year, and there were a lot of national people saying that, that could be a hangover for the Eagles. Now, they haven't played, again, winning ugly is a lot better than losing pretty. Have they played pretty, these 3 games? No. Like, obviously they have stuff they have to work on. You're breaking into new coordinators. You're 5 or 6 new starters on the defense. Like, it's going to take time, but they are winning the games that they're supposed to win. So, like, I have no issue against the way that the Philadelphia Eagles are handling their business, as long as they continue to improve. And I think since week 1 to now to week 3, they have improved each and every game. Let's jump over to.
And to sit there and listen to people talk about, like you talk about that ranking where we're still behind the Cowboys, to listen to those probably same media heads talk about how, the Cardinals are blatantly tanking. You can tell they're tanking. And then you see the Cowboys lose to them and you have the audacity. To me, the Cowboys dominate the first 2 weeks. I get that. But to lose to the Cardinals, you should drop them out of the top 10. There's no way you can sit there against a team that may very well be their only win. But like you said, you can try and tank, but the players aren't necessarily going to tank. They're not going to do that. So they could end up with 2 or 3 wins. But this is going to be one of the few wins that Arizona gets this year. And for some reason, it's okay almost that Dallas was the one to suffer the loss. To me, that's not okay that Dallas suffered the loss. You dominated competition, which was not that much better than what we have faced, and lost to a team that was supposed to essentially only win 0, 1, or 2 games all season. So now they may win 3 because this was not a game they were supposed to win at all.
The Cardinals, though, they are playing tough for Jonathan Gannon for some reason. I don't know why.
But it's always like that with these rebuilding teams. They always play so tough, and it makes decisions so much harder.
Really?
Oh, yeah, why? Because everyone shows that video where he's going, and whatever he was going on talking about. Like,
who took the bus today? We need to
his motivational speech.
Let's jump over to the Eagles defense, which easily had their best game of the year. Nobody can run on this team. When the Buccaneers decided to run the football, I said thank you. Like, continue, please. Like, keep running the football. Even though that's the first interception or second interception that Hurts threw that Tampa started down at the 1. I can't believe that Tampa's offensive coordinator said, you know what, we haven't been able to run the ball today. Let's try to run it right up against Jordan Davis.
I think he was praying for a yard. He just wanted a yard or 2 of breathing room. He knew he wasn't getting much, but he's like, if we can give Mayfield anything.
QB sneak it.
I agree with you there. I think that QB sneak was probably a smarter play. You watched the Eagles with the tush push against you 4 or 5 times last night, and you don't think, hey, let's give that a shot.
But let's be real. As much as people complain about the tush push and saying it like anybody can do it, not anybody can do it. Not anybody has Jason.
Nobody's been able to replicate it with that same success.
Jalen Hurts that squats 600 pounds. The Colts tried to run it week 1, it didn't work. There's a bunch of teams that have tried to run it and it hasn't worked. So, look, this just because the Eagles are good at it doesn't mean that the play needs to be outlawed. Like, if there was just something that only a certain, then Tyreek Hill shouldn't be able to play because he's the fastest player in the world with the football. Like, give me a break. If you want to stop it, either A, don't let the Eagles get to 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, or B, learn how to stop it. Figure it out. Just because the Eagles are better at it than everybody else doesn't mean that you need to outlaw it. But going back, Zach Cunningham and Nick Morrow have looked really good at linebacker. We were worried, obviously, about the linebacker position, and then Dean got hurt, and it was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? But those two have played very, very well together. I need to talk about Jalen Carter, though. How 8 teams let him slip, or it was 7 teams because Houston had 2 picks, but how he got through 8 picks, and then how the Bears traded that pick to the Eagles so that they could go back and get a tackle. They probably could have drafted it in the 2nd round. Like how the NFL allowed that to happen, to pair him with Jordan Davis. It's insane. He as of right now, he is and I mentioned it earlier, so we kind of want to expand on it. He is the best player on the Eagles defense and doesn't even play 50% of the snaps.
He played 21 snaps last night. 21.
But they only had like 47 defensive snaps.
40, yeah, but 21 and 47, that's less than 50% still.
I know, and I'm saying, like, he deserves to be on the field more because he can stop the run, he can get after the passer, and again, he's the best player on the defense. So we're at a point now, like, I know that they have a lot of studs up front, and this is like back to when he was at Georgia, because Georgia has all these 5-star players, and he's not going to play 100% of the snaps. Jordan Davis wasn't, Nolan Smith wasn't, like, because they have so many guys, and to keep people from wanting to jump in the transfer portal, they're going to play everybody. I get it. We're not even talking about Milton Williams or Tuilopo, who got a sack yesterday. Like, there's so much depth at the defensive tackle position that you want everybody to get some shine. But Jalen Carter should be on the field for 70, 75% of the snaps. He is that damn good. He goes. Remember when Jalen Carter, as Mr. Crockpot says, remember when Jalen Carter's goal this year was to be Defensive Rookie of the Year? Dude is go. He's going to make the Pro Bowl. He might be an All-Pro. And if it weren't for TJ Watt, Joey Bosa, Michael Parsons, he would win the freaking Defensive Player of the Year. That's how good.
And he's going to play way less than all those guys. Easily. Well, even at the end of the season, when we look at it, he's already at 50% snaps. So he's already behind some of these guys who are playing 95% of snaps. Like, I posted it that Jalen Carter leads all defensive tackles with pressures at 15. I posted it on Twitter, and behind him is Aaron Donald with 14, who has played almost double the amount of snaps that he has. So some of these guys have played like double the amount of snaps. And then you look at it from a pass rush perspective. Yes, that lowers the number because Aaron Donald's out there in all on all occasions. Jordan Davis swaps in usually on run plays, or when what they would suspect to be a run play, Jordan Davis is usually in and Jalen Carter's out. But at the end of the day, it's still impressive to see what he's able to do with minimum. I think I did the math. He is getting a pressure on 17% of his snaps. Like, that's crazy. Like, it's absurd, the numbers that he's putting up. And I agree with you. Like, you're going to want to play him more. Fletcher Cox is still out playing him. Jordan Davis played the same amount as him. So...
And I think, as Mr. Crockpot says, I'm good with Jalen Carter snaps percentage being around 40 to 50%. It's only September. As the season goes on, because he's young, he'll be fresher longer than a Fletcher Cox. His snaps will go up. Fletcher's will come down a little bit, and they'll start to even each other out. And, like, it's tough because they're all playing at a high level. You're not going to be able. It's tough. Like, you obviously want to have the hot hand out there, but when they're all hot and they all play the same position, like, the Eagles do play a 5-man front every once in a while, but you don't always want to have 3 defensive tackles out on the field. Granted, Jordan Davis has speed and can get out on can get after the quarterback, like, unlike a lot of defensive tackles, but like I say, in Aaron Donald. So he could be more like that hybrid defensive end, defensive tackle, but just keep rotating them. We want freshness. Remember when we won the Super Bowl, we had a 1A and a 1B. Keep them fresh. The offensive line is out there 100% of the time. They get tired. Then you can go out there and do a bull rush or do a push and pull or whatever it is. Get by the guard, get by the center, and get after the quarterback. So it's going well with what the side and what the
Mhm.
defensive coaches are doing with in terms of the rotation.
Yeah, and Marlon Tuipulotu's even doing well with his limited number of snaps. So like you have this really fresh and rotating group of guys, and it should stay that way because keeping these guys, rotating these guys in and out and keeping them fresh is all important for avoiding the I word. You know, we don't want to see any more injuries. We've seen some. Last night we came out pretty good considering we were kind of nervous about the Monday night curse that seemed to be going on. It seemed to have gone away last night because neither game really saw major injuries. But I mean, it is really impressive what these defensive tackles are doing, and hopefully it continues to they continue to play this way. But I see no reason why they won't continue to play this way. And by the way, I guess I'll shout out myself that last episode, my player to watch on defense was Reed Blankenship, and I called a game sealing interception. I think this wasn't a game sealing interception, but it wasn't as the first interception of his career. So I did call that. And I think, what were you, Jalen Carter, that you picked? No, you picked Hassan Reddick, who still has not really shown up, and there's already articles out there.
The defense is playing so well, and Hassan Reddick has done. He hasn't been on the stat sheet at all. So imagine if he starts to get going. Nolan Smith had a big hit on Baker Mayfield. Mr. Crockpot says, I don't think the Eagles pass rush is going to get 70 sacks because it's clear opposing offenses are getting the ball out super fast, but I think this year's pass rush is more balanced and deeper. Oh, 100%. Like, look, the 70 sacks, I think, was an anomaly. That was ridiculous what the Eagles were able to do last year.
I think it's paired with the strength of schedule, too. We got a much easier schedule.
So. You're not going to get 9 sacks against Carson Wentz like you did last year. But it is. I think that they are a lot deeper on the defensive line. Reed was good. He was good.
I still say his tackling technique.
Edmonds. It doesn't say much, but he is better than Evans and Edmonds, who are terrible, by the way. I still want Howie to go out there and make a move for another safety. Whether I love Buddha, obviously, don't think it'll happen, but like Buddha, Jeremy Chin, give me somebody else that could be the safety next to Reed Blankenship. But just because like he's the best safety on the roster, that doesn't mean much because look who the safeties are. Because like Kevon Wallace would be a starter if he was still on the team. I think he's
100%. He's doing really well in Arizona.
Right now, again, Arizona's not that good, but like Kevon Wallace would definitely be a starter right now. Sidney Brown did have the play, but I do think that was more of a drop by Mike Evans than it was a play by Sidney Brown. Evans had a couple drops.
I think it was more of a Baker Mayfield miss. He was a little short on it. If he throws that a yard or two deeper, that's a catch for Evans. And we're not even talking about Brown making a play because right after that was when he was injured. He got injured on that play. But and I do want to say about Reed Blankenship, I still hate his tackling technique because everyone's like, oh my God, look at that highlight reel, like the highlight reel hit where he came from like 13 yards out and made that big tackle in the right. You can just as easily, he could just as easily have missed that. And that was 12 yards for the offense. Like that's the thing. His technique scares the hell out of me. It makes for great highlights and it makes it look super good on film. But at the end of the day, the technique still scares me. Every time he goes for a tackle, I'm like, are we getting a big hit? Or we get in a missed tackle and a 10 or 15-yard play going the other way.
Going back to, and thanks for all the comments, Mr. Crockpot. This is a good back and forth. Going back to Jalen Carter, though, I'm pretty sure he took on the double team that opened up the lane for Zach Cunningham to get the save. He did. So, and also Jordan Davis deserves a lot of credit on that, and Brandon Graham talked about it. Like, Davis didn't get off the ball really quick on that, but when he engaged the center, his power, it's ridiculous how powerful Jordan Davis is. He threw the center into the running back. And with Carter taking the double team, Zach Cunningham was able to get in there and get the tackle. It was, or no, I think it was Morrow that got the sack.
It was Morrow, yep.
But yeah, like those two guys, and look, we know what Jalen Carter can do, but after last year, there was a lot of talk on Jordan Davis about was that pick justified? You can tell, and I think I talked about it on Friday. You can tell that Davis put a lot of pride and put a lot of work into his offseason training. He looks like a totally different player in the first 3 games this year. He finally got a sack, but he's trying to become more of a 3-down 3-down player. And I think like eventually, maybe it won't be this year, but he'll be able to be a 3-down player. Look, Fletcher Cox isn't going to be here forever, but you have the 2 young Philly dog studs in the middle of that line for years. You're not going to let Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter get away. They're going to be on this roster for the next 5, 7, 9 years, whatever it is, years, if they can stay healthy. And having them 2 together is going to be insane. And like, good luck to the opposing centers that have to face the Eagles, because you're not going to want to go up against Jalen Carter every down. I think it was Seth Joyner and Dick Vermeil are comparing Jalen Carter to Reggie White and Jerome Brown. Like, we're not talking about guys that are they're fringe players. You're talking about one of the greatest defensive players of all time in Reggie White, and a guy that would have been a top defensive tackle of all time in Jerome Brown before his life got cut short. He is being compared to legends. And if he can continue to stay on the right path, man, Jalen Carter has a bright, bright future. And again, I agree. Like, I would love to get a Jalen Carter jersey. I am scared to get a current player that's young, because usually if I get a current player that's young, something happens. They either digress or they leave the team. So I might go like with a Kelsey. If you haven't gotten a Kelsey, I would probably do that, because he's only got a year, maybe, or 2. Who knows? If they keep winning, he might not want to go anywhere. And he plays at a high level like he is. But yeah, it's just Jalen Carter. Opposing offensive coordinators are now designing their game plan to double team him. But then you have Jordan Davis, Fletcher Cox, Josh Sweat, who Josh Sweat didn't even make a sighting yesterday. That's very rare. Hassan Reddick hasn't started. Once everybody starts getting on the same game plan and starts making plays, I don't know how you're going to stop. I don't know how you're going to stop the Eagles front. Like, they're going to get after the quarterback. They might not sack the quarterback. They're going to force the quarterbacks to throw the ball sooner than they want to, and that'll force turnovers on the back end. Like, Slay should have had one yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, didn't. But he gave up a touchdown.
I made the comment in the group chat. I was like, the amount of interceptions Slay could have with the amount of dropped INTs we've seen over the last couple seasons is wild. This man could probably have 7 or 8 picks additionally, if like at least 3 or 4 additionally, if he gets a couple of those, a few of those, a certain percent of those back. But it was on a tip ball. It was a pretty tough play to make in the instant moment. So I do get that one. It looked tougher to make than some of the other ones we've seen right in his hands that he dropped. But on the Jordan Davis point, I mean, it's clear he worked on his conditioning. The reports were that he worked on his conditioning all summer. But you got to remember, this man's 330 pounds. Like, this, it's going to take more than a year of off-season conditioning to get that conditioning.
There's no way he's 330.
He's almost 3. They said it last night. He's huge. He's a humongous human being. He's at or over 300. But like, you have to think that to work on conditioning of a near or over 300-pound man, it's going to take time and it's going to take effort. But I do think that Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis is a combination. Jordan Davis is a space eater, and he is so good against the run. He was like, that play where he had him by that throat, like he basically had him in a chokehold and he was not moving. Like, Rashad White was trying so hard to go somewheres and he was just stonewalled. But having like a guy like a space eater, like Jordan Davis, and then a guy who's an athletic freak, but also an extremely technical player like Jalen Carter, that can be a very dangerous 1-2 punch at your defensive tackle, nose tackle positions. And I think that it's something that's really exciting for the future. We don't need Jordan Davis to be something he's not, but to be better than what he was year 1 and continue to see that progress in year 2. Year 3 could be a massive year, and it can be when him and Jalen Carter can truly take over as generally the 3-down guys. They're always going to have a lot of defensive tackles. There's always going to be depth there. You're never going to see our defensive tackles or edges probably play 100% of snaps. I know we saw Reddick do it a bit last season, but you're never going to see the tackles for sure play 100% snaps. That just doesn't happen. But I mean, to have these guys be able to play 60 or 70% of snaps and be as effective as they are right now would be humongous. It would be the best interior duo in the NFL by far. And I don't think it's a stretch to start talking about that.
No, it's not. How do you think Bradbury fared in the slot yesterday? I mean, early on, I think he was kind of working his way into, obviously the slot's not easy because if you're playing on the outside, you have the sideline that can help you. In the slot, receivers can go either way. So Godwin, was able to, I think, early on in the game was able to get a couple of plays off on him. But I think Bradbury did an outstanding job, later in the second quarter throughout the second half. And we didn't hear Godwin's name at all, I feel like, in the second half. So I think Bradbury, the ultimate team, guy in terms of he got the contract based on what he does on the outside. But with Maddox's injury, he realized I'm the best option because you want your best players out on the field in the secondary. And that means Josh Jobe, Bradley, and Slay. Goodrich, I think, kind of got overwhelmed in that Vikings game. Obviously, he was thrown into it. Then he didn't even dress yesterday. But I think that he did a great job against Godwin. And, going up against the Commanders this week, they have three good receivers along with the running back. So I think him being able to play that slot and get into a rhythm, it's going to help this defense even more going forward.
Yeah, I think he did a fairly good job. Like you said, he was kind of warming up at the beginning, so he kind of looked a little lost. And let's be honest here, he was playing one of the tougher slot matchups in the NFL yesterday. So that is like, even though he's a veteran and he's really good at what he does, that's kind of being thrown into the fire with Chris Godwin. I think it will continue to get better and will continue to improve. He'll have I don't know who the primary slot guy is, but I think it's Curtis Samuel in Washington. So it becomes
Jahan Dotson.
Or Jahan Dotson. It's one or the other, which Jahan Dotson's a super good route runner. Curtis Samuel's a yak machine. So you got to make sure you make that initial tackle on him. But I mean, at the end of the day, he looked good. It looks like, they can have confidence that the void can kind of be filled there if the right matchup, or if you need that matchup in the slot. Not always do I think you need to lean on. Like next week, I don't think you have to lean on him as your start and slot guy as much. But if you want to get him into that role and more entrenched in that role and more comfortable in that role going forward, you probably want to keep him there almost 100% of the time as the season continues to go on. But I mean, Josh Jobe, I wasn't overly impressed. I mean, he was targeted 6 times. He only gave up 4 receptions for 27 yards, but it wasn't all that. I wasn't overly impressed with Jobe. And I wouldn't mind seeing in some moments maybe Ringo or Ricks get a shot out there. I know that they're pretty much exclusively special teams. Neither of them touched the field yesterday, but I wouldn't mind seeing them. And that was against, I think Trey Palmer was the primary matchup for Jobe yesterday, which isn't saying a whole lot when Evans and Godwin are the main targets in an offense. So it wasn't, I think there's work to do at the second outside position. I think that they can probably test some things out when the moment allows. I wish I had have put in the fourth quarter, I wish I had taken Jobe out maybe and given a shot to Ricks or Ringo and see what you have. Because you weren't losing control of that game. You had that game in hand. Why not see what you have in some of these other guys? Because Jobe's good, but I'm not overly impressed with Jobe to the point that he has job security. Neither was I with Mario Goodrich. They do like him a lot. It's clear that Jobe is very much liked in that defense. So I'm not surprised that we're not getting to see anybody else, but I wouldn't mind the opportunity to see some other people, and they might be pleasantly surprised by them. But I mean, at this point, I think they have a good thing going with Bradbury in the slot, Slay pretty much shadowing the main target, the number one wide receiver, and then whoever else on the outside with a little bit of help over top.
Slay and Scary Terry, and then I guess maybe Bradbury and Dotson.
Samuel or Dotson, whoever is in the slot.
And then the week after it's the Rams, and I think Cooper Kupp could be back, and he likes to work out of the slot. But then Nakua has been doing very well too. So there's going to be some matchups, but I think that, and I do agree, I would like to see Ricks or Ringo kind of get some play on the defensive side of the ball. But if they start getting blowouts against some of these bad teams that they got coming up, the Rams potentially, the Jets, if they could start getting some big leads if you get a 3 touchdown lead going into the fourth quarter, maybe allow these young guys. But you got to give it it was tough yesterday. The Eagles got the ball back with 9 minutes and 22 seconds to go in the fourth quarter and didn't give the ball back to the Buccaneers. Maybe that was the thought process to, if we have to give the ball back to Tampa, we'll put Ricks or Ringo out there. Let Slay sit down a little bit. The defense didn't go back on the field. It was amazing. The fact that Todd Bowles gave up, didn't call any timeouts to try to get the ball back was amazing. I never seen that. I know there's a stat out there somewhere. Ruben Frank, somebody put it out there about a drive that the Eagles or even in the NFL that's been that long to end a game, but I can't remember one off the top of my head. Like
I think when you know, and Todd Bowles knew in that moment that like, and I kind of respect him for it because some will think, oh my gosh, we can't just give up down 14 points. We got to keep going. But some people, like I guess in that regard, you probably could have potentially done something. Like should have it's a 2-score game, 9 minutes. You probably could have still done something. But the way that defense was playing, sometimes like, and Todd Bowles, he's a really good defensive coordinator. So seeing what he was seeing from the Eagles defense, maybe it was just like, listen, we were bested tonight. Let's walk off this field with our head high and look towards next week. Maybe that's what he was thinking. And you know what? I kind of respect it because it made the end of the game go way quicker than we traditionally see, where it could have been like the second quarter, where that final 2 minutes of the second quarter went on forever because there was reviews, there was turnovers, there was just so much going on. So, I mean, maybe when you know.
I like 7:15 our time, 8:15 your time start times. Like
it was much better for me too because 9:15 ends at like 1.
If it's going to be a night game, give me that 7:15 start time all the time. I do want to quickly touch about special teams because I always give Britton Covey. I give it to him.
Show him his love. Show him his love.
I'm not a big Covey guy, and he got signed to the active roster, and he proved the Eagles right. A couple big returns. He had the couple that he was catching inside the 5, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? It's that ultimate no, yes moment. But the punter for the Buccaneers was ridiculous.
I commented like 3 times in the group chat, like, I know that we're supposed to be talking only Eagles, but this guy can bomb a ball. Camarde, I think. But like he was like, and I think that's why Covey was comfortable because no one was anywhere near him at the time of catching the ball most of the times. There was zero coverage because the ball was going 60 yards.
I always get nervous though because he's so small and he gets pounded, he gets hit hard, and I feel like he's gonna fumble, but he didn't. And he had a couple big returns, so kudos to Covey. I think since there's a stat going out around there since since the second half of last year through now, he's the number 1 punt returner in the NFL or something like that. I don't know off the top of my head.
I was looking at the stats for this year, and of any punt returner with at least 3 returns, because it's early and teams don't punt that much. And I think he has 6 punt returns. His yards per attempt is 18.8 yards, which is actually, I think, second best in the NFL. He's doing he fair catches and he catches. And then when he chooses to return, he can make some things happen. So maybe, like I said, maybe it was because his punter was bombing punts out there and the coverage didn't have time to get down there to do anything. But I mean, even then, like you can usually stop him after 10 or 15 yards. And this guy was pulling off 20 plus chunk yards and he was doing it well. He was seeing the field well. Hopefully it continues because we've seen him regress equally as he progressed this week. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season goes.
No issues with Braden Mann, the Eagles' new punter.
I think he punted once, didn't he?
Yeah. But he held the ball fine for Jake Elliott, and that's what's important.
I watched that really close on that first Elliott field goal. I was like, okay, I gotta see how he holds it. I mean, he held super well. He turned the threads out, and boom, the ball. And Jake Elliott, man, you can't say enough good stuff about him. He, with each passing week, your comment of he's going to be the Eagles' best kicker is looking truer and truer because he's kicking like 2, 3, 4, 5 field goals a game. Like he doesn't just kick one field goal; he kicks a fair amount of field goals, and he is super effective.
That's where we need the Eagles offense to start putting the ball in the end zone. The Eagles offense can start putting it in the end zone. We wouldn't have
just padding Elliott's stats. We don't need that.
Exactly. All right. Before we finish off here, let's go to one of our favorite topics, the unheralded player of the week in the National Football League for week 3. What do we mean by unheralded? I don't want a superstar. I don't want Patrick Mahomes. I don't want A.J. Brown. I don't want Micah Parsons. Like, I don't want any of these guys that we anticipate going out there and making big plays. Somebody that's overlooked, somebody that nobody really talks about. So your unheralded player of the week for week 3 in the National Football League is?
I'm going to the Miami Dolphins game because when you put up 70 points, how can't you visit that game? I'm going because it's probably the only time I'm ever going to be able to use this guy's name again. Devin A-Chain had a massive game. 18 carries, 203 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Before you continue, The Dolphins were trying to run the clock out. The Broncos didn't want to tackle anybody. It was ridiculous. I've never seen, unless it was Madden, I've never seen 70 points in an NFL game.
So 18 carries, 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then through the air, he was 4 for 30 with 2 touchdowns as well. That was just a massive night, and that's not even mentioned in his counterpart, Raheem Mostert, who also had 4 touchdowns. This will be probably the only time I get to say his name. The fact that we didn't see him as much in week 1 and week 2, I was like, man, you drafted this guy to be out there, put this guy out there. And he definitely showed that he deserves to be out there and getting touches. I mean, the Broncos are really bad. Like, I did not expect it to be this bad.
Jalen Waddle was out, so he probably kind of took the Jalen Waddle. I know he's a running back, but I mean,
Raheem Mostert had 7 receptions. Raheem Mostert caught more balls than A-Chain. So, but I mean, the Broncos are really bad. Like, that's where, and I get like reports came out before that game that there was like, this was going to be a big week for Russell Wilson. That was not fair to Russell Wilson that be the week that you gauge it on. Give him another week, but you do have to start to think about that.
Payton wants him to be his quarterback. I think if Sean Payton has his way, Russ is gone after the year.
I think back to when we almost got Russell Wilson, and I'm like, thank you, Denver, because this is what we could be getting into.
It's thank you, Russell Wilson, for not wanting to come to Philly.
Thank you, Russell Wilson, for not wanting to come to Philly. Yeah, true.
Russell, but imagine we make that trade. We don't have Jordan Davis. We don't have A.J. Brown. We don't have
Jalen Hurts.
Like, we don't,
because Jalen Hurts was supposed to be a part of any package that ended up pretty much being
QB. A lot of the guys that are making plays for this Eagles offense or the Eagles team right now. So thank you, Russell Wilson, for not wanting to come to Philly and being scared to play in this city. All right, so my unheralded player of the game, I'm going to go to a former Eagle, a guy that won it after this quarterback threw into triple coverage in the end zone. I'm going Kaiser White. 14 tackles, the game-sealing interception against Dallas and Dak. I don't know if you saw the picture of what Dak from behind Dak when he made the throw. I don't know what Dak was looking at, but you saw 3 Cardinals as the receiver, as Cooks was running across the field, and where he was throwing the ball, I don't know. He didn't see Kaiser White, but Kaiser White was talking trash the entire game, and he backed it up. He was calling Dak a bum, which he is, and he kept going.
He brought that Philly spirit to Arizona.
That Dallas hate does not go away, even if you're not in an Eagles uniform. And again, look, I think as Eagles fans, we kind of weren't the biggest. I don't want to say we weren't the biggest Kaiser White fans, but like, he started off very well last year, and then kind of went downhill a little bit, and that's why the Eagles decided not to bring him back. But I know there's a lot of other linebackers that get talked about. Kaiser White had a great game for the Cardinals on Sunday, so I'm going Kaiser White.
Yeah, it's rare you're going to get the chance.
I knew you were going to go for a Miami Dolphins, so I didn't want to, because I was going to go Devin A-Chain. But
and to be fair for Kaiser White, you can probably use his name again, because he's still not like a household name. He's still not a big guy that you're going to call out often. But yeah, he had a great game, and you can almost put money on a fourth quarter anytime interception by Dak is about as good as
an anytime touchdown run by Hurts.
Pretty much, yeah. That's a good example. I was trying to think of one, but or Patrick Mahomes passing touchdown, anytime passing touchdown. Like, those are the types of plays you can almost get, especially if the Cowboys are down. I don't know what it is about when they're down and they need Dak to be there in this moment, but he's really not making a good play for his money or any more money. That's for sure.
That drive that Dallas had, didn't they run the ball like 7 straight times? They do not trust Dak Prescott. They don't trust him, and it's
McCarthy definitely doesn't. I mean,
he's a terrible play caller. So like, that's gonna be the downfall for Dallas. That's why they're not gonna get past the second round.
I hope so.
They're not going to. We that's a fact. They're not going to. All right. So the Eagles are now 3-0, and they move to their second home game of the season this Sunday at 1:00. The rare 1:00 start, and I'm happy. I like these early games for the Eagles against the Washington Commanders. It should be a fun matchup. The first NFC East matchup. I have no faith in Sam Howell, but we'll talk about that on Friday. We'll be back Friday, maybe during the day, maybe at night. We'll figure it out. Thank you all for joining us in the chat. We appreciate the comments back and forth. You guys help make the show go by super quick, and give us something more to talk about besides what we come in here planning on talking about. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHerrell54. And follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you, Quentin. Hopefully you tune in on Friday as we go over the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders. So for Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.